everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about job descriptions and mind mapping those job descriptions. I wanted to first start with talking about setting up a job description and what that is, what it entails. So no matter whether you work in the home, outside of the home, or stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, everybody actually has a job description. At its base level, a job description is simply a list of all the essential functions or tasks that you perform. It could be anything from bank reconciliations to taking out the trash and doing laundry. Now, when I say essential job functions, it means they're essential and need to be done. Not necessarily it's essential that you were the one to do it. So delegation is okay here. So if you have kids and you want to delegate laundry responsibility for their own clothes to them, that's fine. Essential just means that you're the person responsible for making sure it gets done in case they don't do it. Whatever the consequences might be if they don't do it, that's up to you to determine, but you get the basic idea. It's kind of like the buck stops with you making sure things get done. So if you work outside the home, chances are you probably have a job description. It's recommended that most companies have one when they're hiring somebody. If you are self-employed or work from home, you may not have one. I think in a previous video I mentioned it might be a good idea to set one up, because if you get to the point where you're hiring additional people and you're delegating things out and you want things to become their job, your job description is a great place to start for their job description as you're transferring tasks to them. So when you start out writing a job description, if you're starting from scratch, have nothing set up, usually the first place to start is thinking about your essential roles. So if you are a CFO like I am, my essential roles include things like establishing policies and procedures and maintaining them, maintaining the financial aspects of the company. It includes things like managing third parties, so insurance companies, banks, that sort of thing. If you're in charge of marketing, so your job might be having something to do with placing ads or, overseeing social media for the company. If you are running your own business, you're going to be wearing a bunch of different hats. So you might have a financial aspect, you might have a marketing aspect, you might have an operations aspect of where you're actually getting that work done. So keep in mind that the more you're responsible for, the larger your job description is going to be. Now, it doesn't have to be super detailed. You don't have to write down to what days and times things are being done, but you definitely want to capture the idea of the task that needs to be accomplished, not necessarily how it's being done, because that may change over time with technology and other sorts of things. So start by writing down all of your different roles and responsibilities. Let's say you stay at home and you don't have a job at home. So your job might include taking care of children. It might not. It might include taking care of pets, taking care of the house. Maybe you're in charge of the budget and finances for your house, so you'll have some financial aspects of it. So you'll want to identify each one of those roles and responsibilities. You can also do it by type of person. Let me explain that. So you're a wife, you might be a sister or a brother, you might be a daughter or son, you might be a grandparent. So take into account each of those different roles and what goes into those roles. That helps you identify the things that are important to you. I know in the last video we talked a little bit about values and how to use those to make decisions and establish commitments, but those values are also part of your roles as well. So if you value family and you're a grandparent, you might want to make sure that your role includes spending time with grandkids, setting up specific times that you meet with them, setting up specific times where you're maybe babysitting or taking them out periodically for one-on-one time and establishing that relationship. So you can think about either in groups of tasks or you can think about it in roles. Those are two different ways to look at your job description, but you're ending up with the same information. It's the list of things that you're responsible for that you need to get done. Keep in mind when you're setting these up, these are the sorts of things that we will be setting goals off of. So if that helps you determine what might be included in that job description, whether it's work or home related, think of it that way. What sorts of areas do I care about that I want to set goals for? So again, that might include things like health. It might include things like organization. So consider all of those different roles and responsibilities. That being said, the next thing I want to do is show you how to mind map your job description once you have it. Something else to mention, if you don't have a job description, you want one, you want to get one quickly, try searching online. When I was putting together my job description at the beginning of the year, that's actually where I started. I did a search on the internet for CFO job descriptions, and that gave me a running start with the sorts of things that are generally included. from there I could add to and take away considering my specific roles and responsibilities. So that's another place to start as well, is by searching on the internet. I know there are several websites that talk about being the CEO of your home, so even if you're a stay-at-home parent, look there as well. That could be a good place to start to get some ideas of what other people are doing. All right, so we're going to assume you have a job description, and next up I'm going to turn the camera around and we're going to talk a little bit about mind mapping it. Keep in mind, pardon the pun, that you don't have to have software to do this. I actually initially started with something on paper, and I will show it to you. Very messy, very small, but because I was doing it on a personal size sheet of paper while I was at a hair appointment. So it's not something that has to be big and fancy. It's just a place for you to write everything down visually if you are a visual person rather than a list person, so that it's a little more useful to you. So that being said, let's go and take a look at how to mind map your job description. All right, so I wanted to start by reminding you of what my job description looks like, my office job description. The first page is a lot of items that you'll find, a corporate job description that may not necessarily be anything we need to worry about as far as mind mapping. So I'm going to flip to the next couple of pages here. And what you'll see is that it's broken down into types of areas. So there's planning, there's operations, there's risk management, funding, and third parties. So I think I've mentioned in other videos that those are my major areas that are kind of, and I'll show you in the mind map. So CFO's in the center, and then there's spokes off the wheel, and those are those main sections. There was one day, actually I think this is the third page, there's also financial information. There was one day after I'd finished this, I had a hair appointment, didn't have a lot of room to be writing on anything, didn't have my computer with me, but I wanted to get this as a mind map because, as I mentioned in my last video, this was like a lot of gobbledygook. Like every time I looked at it, it was like blah, blah, blah. So in the interest of showing you, things don't have to be fancy. This was my first mind map. Now, mind you, this is a personal sized piece of paper, so it is very small, but the essential information was on there. And then I took this and fleshed it out a little bit, but from this, I actually did put it on the computer, and that's where I came up with this mind map. So this one's the one that's color coded. But as you can see, my job title's in the middle, and then each area, main area of focus, has its own color coordination. So we have fiscal function performance, strategic planning, policies and procedures, third parties, administrative functions, and risk management. So these all correspond with a lot of this information. Now I actually broke this down even further because there's budgeting under planning, there's financial and tax strategies, there's fiscal function and performance, there's financial information over here that contains items about budgeting. I didn't necessarily only rely on these headers, but I took a list of everything that was in here and just marked it up, which I don't have that copy with me. I think I threw that away. But I made notes about what kind of went together in categories that made sense. So I wanted to walk you through how I got from this to this. So let's say that I am going to go ahead and use these headers. If you're writing your own job description, organize things how they make sense to you. And just for your sake, I'm going to use a larger piece of paper. So I'm going to go ahead and write in my job description. So the first section here is planning. And then there's operations. And I'm not taking the time to write neatly, so I can't do that standing up for whatever reason. You'll get the idea. So financial information, risk management, funding, and then we have third parties. Since I'm leaving off with third parties, I'll start here. Under third parties, we have bank, payroll, banking again, any other third parties, and then transaction processing systems. So for us, the transaction processing systems happens through our financial software. I actually don't have any influence over that, so I'm not going to include that in here necessarily. So for me, the big things that come off of this are banks and payroll. All right, so under funding, there's cash flow projection process, ensuring there's adequate cash flow, and then managing capital and budgeting processes. So under funding, we're going to put cash flow and capital requests. So you can kind of see how I'm breaking this down. I'm looking at each one, I'm kind of grouping them together because there's going to be overlap. Risk management includes insurance. Healthcare. Legal issues. Now there will be some things that kind of fit in different areas. We don't have our own legal department, so technically that could be a third party. But again, this is just so it's almost like a memory jog for you to realize what you do and don't need to goal set about. So I wouldn't get hung up in making sure that it's absolutely perfect and things are exactly where they have to be. It's, again, something, it's like a checklist almost to make sure that there's nothing you need to set a goal about. And then I'll just call this risk profile. So understanding and mitigating key elements of the company's risk profile, that could be things like emergency procedures manuals, things like that. All right, so under financial information, so it's timely and accurate analysis of budget, financial reports, and trends. So I'm just going to call that financial reports. Budgeting process, we'll put budgeting here. Advice on financial implications, so I'll call it advice, financial advice. Financial forecasting, budgets, and reporting, that kind of falls under here. Internal controls, these are very important when it comes to accounting. So we'll put that here, internal controls. And then coordinating fiscal reporting activities, again, that kind of falls under financial reports. So that covers that area. All right, so under operations, there's policies and procedures. Advice on, with the financial perspective on any decisions. Which is here, financial advice, but this is more business decision making. And then there's technical financial advice as well. So again, that could be part of this financial advice here. That's up to you. I'm leaving it separate just because. All right, planning. So we have financial strategies, fiscal function and performance. That's kind of here under financial information. We have strategic planning. Long-range planning, which is also strategic planning. Strategic financial input on decision making, we kind of have that here. Leadership and development of financial objectives, so we'll put that there. And again, you can abbreviate this because it only has to make sense to you. All right, so on there's strategic vision, which is kind of strategic planning. There's stakeholder relationships, so we'll put that here. So this could be things like relationships within the industry, relationships with the government, if you have anything to do with the government. There's all sorts of things that are covered in that. Participate in developing new business. That might be a financial decision, it might not. And providing an operating budget. So for me, that would actually fall under here, under budgeting for under financial information. And then monitor and direct the implementation of strategic business plans. That would go under strat planning. So that gives you an idea of how I've taken blah, blah, blah and made it into an actual mind map, because this helps me visually For me, this is a checklist. I can come up here and be like, third parties, what do I need to do anything with payroll? Yes or no? Do I need to do anything with banks? Yes or no? So this is how I actually do any sort of brain dump, strategic planning, goal planning, any of that sort of thing. I'm using my actual mind map, not this. So this is for a business. So let's talk about a couple of ways that we can do this for the house. So I'm just going to divide this in two because I kind of see two ways that we can do this. So at the center of both of these, I'm just going to put me because that's who it's for. So the first one, let's talk about roles and relationships. So I'm a wife, I'm a sister, daughter, let's say volunteer, well, it's not actually like a role, we're gonna put church. So this is based off of, oh, and we'll call it a homekeeper, just because. So this is kind of based on more of a role sort of situation. Under homekeeper, we might have cleaning house, under sister, you may have, and this might overlap, maybe some sort of a family dinner. That's something you go to as part of that relationship. As a wife, you might have a date night. Maybe you have a weekly planning meeting with your spouse. As a volunteer, you would probably want to list all of your different volunteer areas. Under church, you might want to do quiet time, if that's something you're wanting to work on. Maybe you have some volunteer things at the church. So this is one way to do it based on roles. So the other way is to do it based on groupings of tasks or responsibilities that you have, not so much role-based, but just like type of task-based. So this is more like what we were doing on the backside with the business. So here, you might have health, home. You might have a few duplicates. So if you like to volunteer, you might have that. You might have family. So you get the idea. So these are types of tasks. So this might be exercise, cooking. Home might be, again, cleaning. Could be budgeting. This might be where you would put, oh, family would be kids. So they have extra activities that they do. Maybe you have a date time with your kids one-on-one and with your husband. So you may want to put that there because that's something that you are responsible for, that you've agreed to do. So think of these as your commitments. So if you do any volunteering, maybe you have some sort of a PTA commitment, that would all be here. And then off of that, you can put extra information. So if you have a specific, maybe you're vice president of the PTA, and that would go under PTA. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of how you can mind map, not just for your job, if you work outside the home, but also how you can mind map for your responsibilities at home. And you can either separate them out or you can make one giant one. For me, I know my job is involved and I like the detail, so I will probably have two. And to be honest, I haven't created one for the home aspect of it yet. That's something I will probably be working on over the next couple of weeks or months. It's gonna get added to my to-do list. So again, I have kind of a checklist of things that I'm working on. Mine will probably look more like this as far as wanting to, check in on how I'm doing with health, home, any volunteering things, although for me, this is usually work related. Family type of activities. So mine will probably look like this, but sometimes people think better in terms of the different roles you take on in your life. So there's two different options for that. So just to bring back my official one, I know the toner is a little shiny, so it's kind of hard to read. I just wanted to give you an idea of the level of detail that I put into some of these like outer rim sorts of tasks. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but detailed enough that you know what it means. So let's say strategic planning. So strategic financial input on decision-making issues. Working with the president on strategic vision. And parts of that is company's future direction, tactical initiatives, and advice on impact of new programs. So it's not super detailed, but it's detailed enough that I know what it means when I look at it. So it doesn't have to be a paragraph. It just has to be enough information that you know what it is. Foster and cultivate stakeholder relationships on city, state, and national levels. That hits the 3 different areas that I want to make sure that we're focusing on, because we do talk with our city, state, and national governments and make sure they understand if they make this decision, this is how it affects our industry. Because I feel as a business owner, but also somebody who participates in the industry, that I am a subject matter expert, and therefore it's my responsibility to lend my expertise to my government. That's part of my service. And to me, it's one of those things where lobbying has such a bad name, but honestly, that's really what it is. It's people who are experts in their field talking with their government officials and letting them know, if you make this decision, these are the consequences. You might intend them to happen, you might not intend them to happen, but we want to make sure you've considered everything that might go into that decision before you make it. Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't want somebody making a decision for me that I have no input on if it's going to negatively impact me. At least I know if I gave my input, hopefully it's been considered, however briefly, before they go on and make that final decision. So off my soapbox. Sorry about that. Being active at the city, state, and national levels is something I am passionate about, only because I'm the type of person that likes to actually get involved and have a say in how things are run. And if I don't, I can't complain about how things are, because I didn't try my best to have an influence on a positive outcome. So anyway, I got back on that soapbox. Sorry, I'll get off. So third parties, here there's not as much information. Tax, legal, bank and deposit relationships, transaction processing systems. I just know that those are relationships we have, and it's just a trigger for me. Do I need to do anything about these? So again, as much information as you need to know what it is, but you don't have to write a book on these mind maps. If you need more information, that's why you have this sheet. You can always go back and reference it if you want. This is just essentially a summary of your job descriptions. So hopefully that was a little more information than what we talked about the last time. I do suggest you go and watch the previous video I had on mind mapping your job description. I'll link it down below. It was a little more theoretical and not quite so much like how to nitty-gritty. So I'm hoping that I've now touched both sides of it, so it makes sense on how to create this sort of a chart from this sort of a document. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty. This works just as well as this does. Now I will link the software I used for this mind map down below. I do use a Mac, so it is a Mac software program. It is free. I unfortunately have not used a Windows machine in a very long time, so if you do MindMap and you use a software program that you can recommend and you're, well, either Mac or Windows, please go ahead and put it in the comments below so people can get an idea of what the options are for mind mapping programs. I know there is a paid program called iMindMap, but it is, as far as I remember, fairly expensive, and so if you're just wanting it for something like this, I wouldn't bother with it. You might be able to get an app on your phone that might be fairly easy to use, but I will link the options I'm aware of and the ones that I've had experience with down below so that you can take a look at them and see if it's something you're interested in. That being said, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. If you liked this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. I do have more in the Girlboss functional planning series coming up this month, so please subscribe if you haven't already to be notified when the next videos come out. I am trying to post them Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I am trying to pre-record them because I do have company coming in. So it's looking like that schedule's going to work out unless I have some sort of technical issues. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.